Hello, and welcome to Miss Yusuf's English class. In this video, we are going to analyze The Garden of Love by William Blake. Before we get into the poem, however, let's get some background notes on the poet. William Blake was an English poet, painter, and printmaker. Largely unrecognized during his lifetime, Blake is now considered a seminal figure in the history of the poetry and visual arts of the Romantic Age. Although Blake was considered mad by contemporaries for his idiosyncratic views, he is held in high regard by later critics for his expressiveness and creativity and for the philosophical and mystical undercurrents within his work. His paintings and poetry have been characterized as part of the Romantic movement and as pre-Romantic. Blake's marriage to Catherine Sophia Boucher was close and devoted until his death in August 1827. Let's read The Garden of Love. I went to the Garden of Love and saw what I never had seen. A chapel was built in the midst where I used to play on the green. And the gates of this chapel were shut, and thou shalt not writ over the door. So I turned to the garden of love that so many sweet flowers bore, and I saw it was filled with graves and tombstones where flowers should be, and priests in black gowns were walking their rounds, and binding with briars my joys and desires. Right, before we go into a section by section analysis, I would ask you to remember that this is a poem that is seen from the perspective of the speaker. Okay, and it's going to be his emotions, it's going to be his impressions of things, it's going to be his perspective, it's going to be his personal opinion on things. And you're going to find in the course of this poem that the speaker is very, very critical of the Catholic Church. Okay, that is the basis of this poem, and he's discussing his maturity and his awareness as he grew and as he matured from a boy to a man about the restrictive nature of the church and how innocence was lost, not because he was pure of spirit and of action, but because he became aware of his own weakness and his own sin in the course of his interaction with the faith. Okay, so while the speaker is very, very critical, and we're going to have to go very deeply into his criticism of the church, this is not a personal opinion, it's an interpretation. Okay, so whatever your personal feeling is as a reader, as a critic, as a scholar, as a listener, I think it's important for you to suspend your own beliefs at this point. Leave it at the door and embrace this poem for what it's worth. Embrace the work for the speaker's intention and the speaker's spirit. Okay, this is not a contemporary criticism of the church. It's not my personal criticism of the church. It's not my opinion of how religion is oppressive. Okay, this isn't about you and me. So we should put our faith and our own opinion about belief systems in check before we go into this poem, because it may get critical, it may get offensive even. And so if you are somebody who believes in this and you find that it's overcritical, you're going to feel that it's a personal attack, it's important for you to remember that these are just words written by a person who was expressing his feelings and his opinions, and I am doing the same thing. So go into it with an open mind and just remember that it's a poem with a message, and you could choose to embrace the message or to ignore it. Okay, so check your religious beliefs at the door. Right, so the speaker says, I went to the Garden of Love and I saw what I never had seen. So immediately in the first, in the title and in the first line, the speaker sets up for an image, for an impression. He sets us up for a very different expectation than what we actually get. You say garden, you think of beautiful flowers, beautiful trees, very lush, very healthy, very luxuriant, a very aesthetically pleasing image. And of course love, that most beautiful and most powerful of human emotion. However, in the second line, he cancels it out. I was expecting to see my garden of love, but instead I saw what I never had seen. So the speaker in the very first line, he crushes our expectation. Okay, from the title and from the first line, he completely takes away our expectation and replaces it with something quite opposite. Right, a chapel was built in the midst where I used to play on the green. So the speaker says, I was going to my garden expecting to see something very beautiful and something very happy and something very optimistic, but instead I found a chapel. Right, I found a building of worship that was built in the middle of the grass, in the middle of the lawn where I used to play. Okay, now the word play implies innocence, childhood, naivety, perfection, spiritual cleanliness. Okay, and so the speaker is saying that this chapel now has replaced my free space where I was innocent and happy and carefree, and it has placed onto this building. Right, and within this building you're going to find a lot of other things have been the speaker feels has been robbed of. Right, and the gates of this chapel were shut. Right, so you have now the open space of the green that used to be there where the speaker should play, and now the chapel was there, but further than the chapel, which was an imposition in the first place, it has gates, and the gates are shut. Right, so this place is becoming more and more restrictive. It's becoming more and more selective in its entry. It's becoming more and more oppressed, crushed, very, very restrictive. So not only was there a chapel where there used to be open space, the chapel now has gates and the gates are closed. Whereas I guess if we still had the garden and we still had the green lawn, everyone would be free to come there, join in, and be free and happy as well. But instead, the chapel is there, and not just a chapel, its gates are closed. And furthermore, to the gates, thou shalt not was written over the door. So thou shalt not is the first three words of the commandments. Right, and the commandments are a universal message about how to live your life and what are the grave sins. Right, and again, the chapel itself is a building that took the place of the open lawn. The gates of the chapel were shut to further restrict entry, and now there's a reminder of what you shall not do over the door. So a complete restriction, a complete selection of a reservation of admission. Okay, that is to say that only a very select few may now enter, may now be welcome. A reminder of sin, a reminder of our weakness is on the door, a reminder of our human failings is on the door. So different to the free garden of love that had been there before. So the speaker here is telling us that he doesn't have a very positive impression of institutionalized religion, the Catholic Church in particular, and the speaker suggests that religion now and institutionalized faith has now replaced something that was at one time free and innocent and happy, and now has placed on it a whole lot of rules with which to live his life by. Okay, and as you can see, it has changed his character. It has made him quite an unhappy, miserable person, a restricted person, a person who's always aware of his limitations and his sinfulness. Okay, and remember, for every sin you commit, there is a punishment that is allocated to it. And so the speaker now is saying that for everything we're going to do wrong, there's punishment for it. Where's the freedom? Where's the joy? Where's the happiness? Where's the life? Where's the living? Where's the embracing of our existence? Right, so the speaker had enough of that, and he turned away from the chapel, and he turned back to the garden of love with the expectation of seeing all the many sweet flowers that he used to see before. Right, again, the chapel and the sweet flowers and the sweet garden, they're paradoxical here. The speaker is giving them completely opposite, completely contrasting images. Right, he's giving the chapel a man-made quality, and the garden and the green very naturally nature's gift, very aesthetically beautiful. Right, and then you have the chapel again that's very restrictive, whereas the lawn, the green, was very free for him to play. Right, and then the gates are shut, that is to show that admission restrictions. Right, so he had enough of it, and he's still expecting to see sweet flowers. many sweet flowers, but you're going to find that they've all disappeared. And the many sweet flowers, the image that we get in our head would be color and beautiful smells and flowers, birds, butterflies, but you're going to find quite the opposite is actually there. And instead I saw it was filled with graves and tombstones where flowers should be. Right? The sweet flowers, many sweet flowers were bearing, but they've been replaced with graves and tombstones, right? Both associated with death. Right? So all the things that were beautiful and living and vibrant have now been replaced with things that are dull and gloomy and dead. Right? So where the flowers should be, there are now graves and tombstones. Right? A very stark reminder, a very upsetting, disturbing reminder that today you are alive, tomorrow you will be dead. Right? And not exactly what the speaker wanted when he came to his garden in the first place. He came for happiness, he came for joy, he came for some reminiscing, he came for some comfort, and he's getting exactly the opposite. Right, what else did he see? Did he see his friends? Did he see his loved ones? No, he saw priests wearing black gowns. Again, black, the reference to graves and tombstones, reinforcing the theme of death. Right, they were wearing black gowns. They're not wearing colorful, beautiful, flowery colors. They were wearing black. And they were walking their rounds almost like footmen, like patrolmen. Right? Keeping people in check, making sure no one forgets their place, no one forgets that for every sin that they commit, there is punishment for them. Making sure everyone is on track, making sure everyone's conscience is clear, making sure that everyone is reminded of the rules to which they are to live their lives by. And what were they doing? They were binding with briars my joys and my desires, right? So the speaker is saying that they've taken the joys from me. They've taken my desires from me. The desire to live, the desire to be happy, the joys of life, the joys of interaction with other people, the joys of choice, the joys of love, all of that, they have taken them all away. And what have they done? They've bound them. What have they bound them with? Right, briars are this very thorny bush, right? These like branches that are very thorny, very dry, and incidentally it was the crown of Jesus that was made with briars as well. Very thorny and very if you had to touch it, you could get hurt. Right? So not only are they taking away his joys and desires, but they're binding them with something that cannot be broken, or you dare not touch them because you may get hurt if you embrace them. Right? So again, he's talking further about the restrictive nature of the church and how it has the tendency of making us be afraid of everything, be afraid of sensuality, be afraid of freedom, be afraid of living life to the fullest, always being afraid of sinning and incurring God's wrath and incurring punishment upon our souls when we die, for which we have to pay for and be punished for. Right? So again, this image of briars being binding his joys and desires, there is no redeeming them, there is no getting them back, because they are so tightly bound. And so this is how the speaker feels he has to live now. My childhood is over. My life is now being governed by rules and regulations imposed on me by the church. If I do not follow these rules from the church, I will die, and I will be punished for my sins and my violations of God's law. Right, a very, very vivid poem, very beautiful, very rich in its imagery, and also very, very disturbing in its message. But like I told you, embrace it in the spirit in which it was written. Right, that brings us to the end of The Garden of Love. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you find this video helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you do, or if there's anything you'd like me to add to the video. I'd like to acknowledge before I go Slides Carnival for the beautiful free templates that I used in my presentation. They're available on Google, and they have every possible template for your use. If you have a presentation to make, go on down to Slides Carnival on Google and you will find them. They have the most beautiful free templates available for use. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you again soon for our next poem.